Alright, so today's topic, San Diego Comic-Con. Now, unfortunately, it's not what you think. We're not going to look at superhero movies. Unfortunately, there was a group of individuals that were caught doing, some, I say illegal exportation. Some people will call it modern day slavery. But yeah. So if you read the title, you know what we're getting into. So, unfortunately, at San Diego Comic Con, it turns out that there are some individuals that decided to take it upon themselves to do a little bit of a purchase. However, they were caught in a sting, and 14 of them got arrested. And summarizing that as well, there's 10 victims that were, of course, rescued, and one of them was as young as 16. So I want you to keep in mind that people were literally going to go to Comic Con to make a purchase, and they ended up meeting the police. So that's quite a bit to take in. But before we get into it, I just want to look at particularly what the government of California has to say about this. So what exactly is it in their eyes? How does it work? And then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of our topic. So in here it says, what is human trafficking? Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons or modern day slavery, is a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial egging acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological, and may involve the use of violence, threats, lies, or debt bondage. Exploitation of a minor for commercial acts is human trafficking. Regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion was used, human trafficking does not require travel or transportation of the victim across local, state, or international borders. So, just to keep everybody up to speed, this means that being trafficked doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like moved around. Like, it's not like the movies like Taken. Okay, some people will think about like Taken or something. That's what that happens. You get taken away and then you put into a brothel or something, and that's not always the case. If there's any form of exploitation, that could be seen as, trafficking. Literally what Andrew Tate did. Andrew Tate didn't kidnap anybody, but he would make them fall in love with him, and then he would entrap them into whatever situation that they was in. Of course, his case is still ongoing, as we've seen, but that's not what we're talking about today. And just for some quick stats about California in particular, it says that California is one of the largest sites of human trafficking in the United States. In 2018, 1,656 cases of human trafficking were reported in California. Of those cases, 1,226 were sex trafficking cases, 151 were labor trafficking cases, 110 involved both labor and sex trafficking, and in 169 cases, the type of trafficking was not specified. So, as you can see here, California is a pretty big hotspot. Now, the reason as to why, I'm not entirely sure, but if I were to make an educated guess on it, and we can make a guess, California is close to it's like a port area, so naturally, you can get stuff in and out of ports and stuff. So because California is all the way on the west coast, you can get to places like Asia or whatever. So a lot of opportunity. So keep in mind, anytime you're in a coastal city, just think about it like coast means opportunity to do a lot of stuff. Opportunity for trading, opportunity for all that craziness. So, yeah. Pretty insane. Now, of course, before we keep going, I actually do want to look a little bit more into a couple bit more for definitions, because in this case here, the federal term actually here says, federal law defines trafficking in persons as sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the labor induced to perform such act has not attained 18 years of age, the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of subjugation to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. So what I'm just trying to let y'all know is, while it's a bit redundant that I'm reading two different definitions, I just want to show you that there is consistency all around into how this stuff will get prosecuted, because we need some consistency around it. So as you can see here, it's because California is one of the larger states that has this major problem. What ends up happening is that there has to be a lot of crackdowns on it. So before we get into it, I will say, if you ever see signs of this kind of stuff, just call your local hotline or call 911 if you ever see any signs of human trafficking. because it's very important that, you know, these people get put behind bars. But yeah, that's the most I can tell you. But anyways, let's get on to the story now that we got all the legal jargon out the way. Now, before we really get into it, I'm actually going to share a quick clip from NBC that was discussing this topic, just because I feel like it's important that we get, you know, a full context, and then we're going to actually talk about it afterwards.
ComicCon, it's the ultimate charade, but what law enforcement found behind some masks was not just cosplay.
In here, everybody's like a disguise. It's like Halloween. Okay, they feel like they are invisible.
Director of Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition, Marissa Ugarte, is cheering on the 35 to 50 undercover officers with the San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force working ComicCon daily to make so many arrests.
Finding these buyers, you know, or predators of the 14 people arrested, for me was like
10 women, one of them just 16 years old, the rest in their 20s and 30s, were liberated from their traffickers in this sting operation. Ugarte's organization will be caretaking some of those adults.
We do crisis intervention, we do case management, we find them jobs, housing, and everything.
San Diego ranks 13th for human trafficking among a list of large cities. The state attorney general, who organized this ComicCon sting, says that he's working sex trafficking cases here all year round.
So I feel like some of you might be asking, why at a big event is it possible to get away with something like this? Why would they pick Comic-Con of all places to get away with stuff? And, you know, there's a variety of reasons I can possibly give you, but the biggest thing that I really want to mention is that when it comes to a place like Comic-Con, you have ample places to cover. Like, there's like, because imagine you, I don't know, you're in like a small group and everybody's dressed up as something, I don't know, you're all Star Wars characters. Who's going to suspect that a group with a bunch of people is going to be said to be getting, you know, purchased off or sent off to be bought? It's kind of hard to know. It's kind of like inconspicuous. So when it comes to like these operations, because there's a lot of crackdown on it, and believe me, there's a lot of crackdown on trafficking cases in general, what you end up happening, or what you end up seeing, is that because people are getting cracked down on, they tend to get a bit smarter. Because what is like the number one thing that like how people get into this whole like rings and stuff? It's simple. They take advantage of people who are disadvantaged to begin with. So when you have someone who's taken advantage of, they're gonna do that same tactic that, okay, Comic-Con's a huge place. There's only gonna be 14 of us buying, and there's only 10 people we're sending off. So guess what? We can slip under. However, of course, in this particular case, the California police actually got a tip-off for it. So that's how they end up setting up the sting in the first place. And, you know, I do want to also mention that because, how do I put it? Because of the nature of this crime, we actually don't have a lot of information on the perpetrators. I did try to look, I looked extensively to see if we could get anything like a picture or something, but there is nothing. Of course, this case just came out. So we're going to be following it very closely, as you will see. But there's actually something else I do want to mention as we go on. Oh, I actually want to look into how the state of California actually identifies this kind of crime, because since we don't have much information, I'd actually want to take the time to, you know, get to know how they do it over there and see how you can apply it maybe to your own state. However, if you live in a different country, different state, I recommend looking up the your own area yourself, just because stuff might be a little bit different, but you will see that there is a common pattern. So real quickly, so recognizing the signs. So the following list of potential red flags and indicators of human trafficking to help you recognize the signs. If you see any of these red flags, contact the Human Trafficking Hotline, the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. This will also be in the description below if anyone needs to use it. So let's take a look at some of these, where here it says, common work and living conditions, is not free to leave or come and go as she wishes, is in the commercial sex industry and has a pimp manager, is unpaid, paid very little or paid only through tips, works excessively long and or unusual hours, is not allowed breaks or suffers under unusual restrictions at work, owes a large debt and is unable to pay it off, was recruited through false promises concerning the nature and conditions of his or her work. This one is like really important, because you'll find that to my knowledge, a lot of people who get into like porn and stuff, or prawn or whatever, they get into it through, you know, like an idea of this. Some people do it willingly, but some people are kind of forced into it. And I believe that when it came to like Prawn Hub, they had to crack down on accounts because, unverified accounts, because there was a lot of people posting stuff there that really wasn't supposed to be posted in the first place. So it is what it is. Here also it says, faces high security measures at work and or living locations, opaque windows, boarded up windows, bars on windows, barbed wire, security cameras, etc. Poor mental health or abnormal behavior, poor physical health, lack of control. And also, I mean, this will be up on the screen because I don't want to read too much of it, but some other stuff that I want to show is that claims of just visiting and inability to clarify where she is staying, lack of knowledge of whereabouts and or what city she is in, loss of sense of time, has numerous inconsistencies in his or her story. So there's a lot of signs. However, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky for the average person to figure this stuff out because, you know, some people will just look off some days, but some people look like they are, you know, not doing the best and you want to keep away because sometimes you reporting stuff can put you in danger. However, of course, if you take the natural precautions, anyone can really take on this sort of act. But there's something else. There's one more thing I kind of want to look at, you know, when it comes to these cases. So it turns out that the FBI actually has an official page that they have where they look at, you know, different stuff. So here, if we look at the top of the page, they tell you they give you another version of what the definition of human trafficking is. You have the different types of task force, like the FBI Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Forces, the Anti-Trafficking Coordination Team Initiative, the Enhanced Collaborative Model Human Trafficking Program, and of course, it tells you how you get different investigations or how they end up getting stuff. So you have tips from the public, calls to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline, referrals, proactive victim recovery operations, or outreach to state governments and community entities. So there's a lot of different ways to discover this stuff. However, although I gave you guys some numbers earlier, I do want to keep in mind something that we're like, sometimes you'll notice that there will be times where stuff like this is actually a bit underreported, which is kind of sad to hear. But it's just that when it comes to data and like stats in general, you have to keep in mind that like there's a lot of stuff that actually goes like unreported. So this whole ordeal, like this whole stuff here, is also like a victim of that stuff. So I just want to mention that before we continue on. So also here we have, you know, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, where it just explains the different stuff here, where it's like the 2000 Trafficking Victims Protection Act, TVPA, was the first comprehensive federal law to address human trafficking, in addition to the protections offered through immigration relief for foreign national victims of human trafficking. It focuses on prevention through public awareness programs, both domestically and abroad, and prosecution through new federal criminal statutes. So while I may have said earlier that a lot of people, or at least a lot of like, sometimes trafficking is not really people getting, you know, dragged across borders and stuff, there's still people who are legally here who do get trafficked here. So it's a very sad situation, but I just wanted to point that out. And also you have like the Innocence Lost National Initiative, and you have additional resources where you can contact, you know, different stuff about that, where you get like false advertisements and all this very stuff. But even here at the bottom of the page, you actually will notice that you'll see that there's actually different news articles that you can look at. So in some cases here, you'll have, you know, the most recent one was a Tampa man charged with sex trafficking a minor. And we're actually going to take a look at it really briefly because it's probably going to be rather short. And yeah, here. So because Tampa's in Florida, you're going to get, this is the District of Florida here. But naturally, here, a brief description is just that United States Attorney Roger B. Hamburg announces the unsealing of an indictment charging Jesse Thomas Taylor, 42, Tampa, with trafficking a minor. If convicted, Taylor faces a maximum penalty of life in federal prison. So as you can tell, the FBI really cracks down on this stuff because, you know, it's a lot that goes on at the same time. So that's really where we are with that. It's pretty insane to, you know, to think about. But anyways, I'm just glad that, you know, these pieces of garbage did get caught when it came to this whole ring inside of California in particular, because like I mentioned earlier, it's one of the biggest states when it comes to that. And especially if you've worked in enough places, you can pick up on these signs, but because stuff is so subtle nowadays and where you might not think that people are being, like, you know, trafficked, sometimes it's not the case. So the best idea is just keep a keen eye if you can, and report it to the authorities as much as possible. But anyways, of course, as stated earlier, the helpline will be linked down below. With all that being said, that's basically it for me today. I thought the situation was really, really crazy and like really a lot to get into. But anyways, hopefully, if there's any updates on it, I will keep keep a close eye on it. Well, I can't speak for the life of me. But anyways, with all that being said, if you enjoy this type of content and you want me to investigate stuff like this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and follow my social down in the description below. But that's enough out of me, so later.